Hi everyone, we are studying chapter 1 of your geography once again. In the previous classes we looked at the scope and definition of economic geography. Today we shall study a very interesting portion of this chapter and a very scoring portion of this chapter as well, which is known as resources. Alright. So what is a resource basically? How do you define a resource? Basically, a resource is what? A resource is anything that is useful for man is a resource. Anything that is useful to man is a resource. Now, I will start a little, you have got the notes, follow the notes where you've got it. Where you have not got it will be given to you. Now, resources are divided into many types. Into how many types are the resources divided? That you will find it in your page number 7. There is a diagram where they tell you about the classification of resources. I'll hold the book to you so that you understand. Can you see this diagram? This box? If somebody asks you this question, how are resources classified? Then you should draw that diagram in your answer. You must draw this diagram. And in the exam, drawing a diagram would take time. And that is why you should practice drawing this diagram again and again at home. Again, you should draw the diagram in your examination paper in pencil. You can write the names in pen, but you should draw it in pencil. Is that clear? So you should learn how to draw this diagram. So your diagram, the schematic diagram tells you. And one more thing, when you draw a diagram, suppose you have drawn this diagram of how resources are divided, you have written everything. You should put the diagram in a box and please caption your diagram. I have seen in your examination what you do is that you draw a diagram and leave it there. This is not done. Below you should write it. What is this diagram? So this diagram is classification of resources. Like that you should write it below the diagram. You should write it. What is this diagram? You should always caption your diagram. Don't just draw a diagram and throw it away and come back. Alright, you must caption this diagram. So sir, where shall I get the caption? You will get the caption below each diagram. See, it is written here, classification of resources. This is from page number 7 of your book. Clear? So you should always write what this diagram is about. Remember, you wrote the unit test. Many of you in your unit test forgot to write or did not write. I told you to mark these things, the continental shelf and the continental slope. So you should write below the diagram. Diagram showing continental shelf, continental slope, or whatever you are writing, you should write it below the diagram. And in your book, if this is available, if it is written in the caption, then you should write this caption. Clear? Alright. So how are resources classified? Resources are either classified based on their origin. One classification is that resources are divided into various types. The number one part is based on origin. This classification means where do you get this resource? Where is the origin of this resource? So as you know, based on this, you can further classify your resources into either it is natural resource or it is a man-made resource. Man-made resource or human resource. Human beings themselves are a resource. You and I, all of us are a resource. So either it can be based on origin, it can be natural resource, or it can be man-made resource, or it can be human resource. Based on structure, they may be biotic or abiotic resources. Based on availability and durability, they can be renewable, availability and durability, lasting. Based on how much a resource lasts, it can be renewable resource or it can be non-renewable resource. Based on ownership, it could be individual resource. This pen or this watch is my watch. So based on the origin, it is a man-made resource. It is a man-made resource. Watch does not, do you dig up the ground and find a watch? No. this has been made by man, so it is a man-made resource based upon its origin, based upon the structure, it is a non-living abiotic resource, and based upon the ownership, it is an individual resource. Clear? So like that, suppose you are talking of a university like Assam University. Assam University is a man-made resource. Assam University is a biotic resource, and based on ownership, Assam University is a central government university, so it is a national resource. Alright, so that's how you classify resources. You can look at the diagram and you can understand the types in which resources are classified. I will discuss some things on which you basically often, there is a chance of getting confused and stuff like that. Remember the name of this man called Zimmerman. Now he said that resources must have two characteristics. Zimmerman says that for anything to be a resource, it must have two qualities. What are those qualities? According to Zimmerman, a resource should have two qualities. One is functionality, and one is utility. So as I am taking this class, I will ask you some questions. You should note those questions and write those questions. You see, what is given in the exercises is given. But based on this class, you are getting additional questions. So please write those questions down. The first question for you today is number 1, what is a resource? How do you define a resource? This answer you will find in your book. The definition for resource, you will find it in your book. Please copy the definition from there. You will find it in page number 5, 1.3, meaning and importance of resource, the first line. All the materials essential for human living are called resources. This is the definition of resource. How do you classify resources is the second question. How do you classify resources? For classification of resources, you will say resources are classified into various categories. Resources are classified into various categories. The following schematic diagram, schematic spelling is SCHEAEMATIC. The following schematic diagram can help us understand the classification of resources better. What did you write? The question is, how do you classify resources? Your answer, resources are classified into various categories. The following schematic diagram helps us to understand the classification of resources easily, and then you draw this diagram. Clear? Okay. Now after that, the third question, what according to Zimmerman are the two qualities of a resource? What according to Zimmerman are the two qualities of a resource? The answer you will find it, I will discuss it and you will find it. The answer is given again in page number 5 in the middle of that paragraph, which starts with the heading 1.3. In page number 5 in the middle of the page, you will find functionality and utility. What does it mean? Utility, it's very important, it's very easy to understand. Utility means use. So for anything to become a resource, two qualities are necessary, functionality and utility. Utility means usability. You should be able to use it for your benefit. If you are not able to use something for your benefit, it is not a resource. Clear? If something cannot be used for your benefit, it cannot be used, it is not a resource. Clear? And functionality, it must be able to serve a purpose. It should have a function. It should work. If it doesn't work, it is not a resource. Clear? So this is what Zimmerman says are the two qualities of a resource. So what are the two qualities of resource according to Zimmerman? According to Zimmerman, a resource, in order for something to become a resource, it has to have two qualities. One is functionality and the other is utility. Then also explain in one line. It means that every resource, for anything to become a resource, it means that for anything to become a resource, it should have functionality, it should be workable, it should work, and it should fulfill human needs. it should be useful. All right. So these are the qualities of a resource. Now I am going to another area called human resource. Oh, what is human resource? So this is our next question. What is human resource? Now remember, for anything to become a resource, for anything that you can see, or for that matter most of the things that you see and we use them as resource, it is converted into a resource, that is, it becomes a resource, or it becomes more useful only when human beings apply their knowledge, technology and innovation to it. Let me repeat this line. For anything to serve as a resource, it is important that human knowledge, human innovation and human expertise is applied to it. For any material to become a resource, it is very important that human knowledge, human innovation and human expertise is applied to it. As long as human knowledge, human innovation and expertise is not applied, the material may not be able to function as a resource. Therefore, human beings are the most important resource, because human beings are able to convert anything, any material into a resource, and that's why human beings are called human resource. Clear? Why are human beings called human resource? Human beings are called human resource. Very simple. Human beings are called human resource because for anything to become a resource, it is necessary for human beings to apply their knowledge, skill and expertise to be able to use it. That is why human beings are considered as resource and are called human resource. Clear? All right. Next thing that we go into is the property of resources. First two I already told you. Zimmerman says the property. If somebody asks you what are the properties of a resource, property. So number 1 and 2 Zimmerman has told you. What? Resources should be functional. Okay, resources should be able to, they should be utility, they should have utility, they should have functionality, resource should have utility. Another property of resource is that we are discussing properties of resources: functionality, utility, dynamic. So please write it down. What are the properties of a resource? The properties of a resource is number 1 functionality, number 2 utility, number 3 resources are dynamic. What does the word dynamic mean? Dynamic means be able to change. Okay, dynamic means be able to change. Clear or not? Dynamic means be able to change. Anything that is not, the property of a resource is that you have understood this too, functionality and utility. I am talking of the third one. Third one is that resources are dynamic. It means that resources are able to change themselves. How change themselves? Not that iron turns to gold. No, not that kind of a change. Dynamic means today what is less important may become more important, or today what is very important may not be that important tomorrow. Alright, this is called the dynamic property of resource. In this place, while discussing this, you have to remember two things called resistance and neutral stuff. Okay, now what is resistance? There are some things in the world that are harmful to man. Alright, you remember what is a resource? A resource is anything that helps, that serves man. Anything that is useful to man is a resource. So whatever you see in the world could be a resource. But if something is harmful to man, it is not a resource, it is a resistance. It is not a resource but a resistance. So suppose flood or suppose infertile land, you have got a piece of land where nothing grows, plus that land is probably not even fit for building a house, that is not useful, it is harmful to man, it is a resistance. Alright. On the other hand, there are some things called neutral stuff. What are neutral stuff? Neutral stuff are things that exist, they are neither harmful now nor they are useful now. Neutral stuff, neutral, neutral, it's neither positive nor negative. So neutral stuff are those things which are neither harmful nor useful. They are known as neutral stuff. So the property of a resource is that resource is dynamic, which means that today what is a neutral stuff may become a resource, full-fledged resource tomorrow. Alright, you dig the ground, you find something, you don't know what it is. It is not harming you and it is not even being useful to you. But tomorrow, if human knowledge can convert this thing into something useful, it will become a resource. So in this way, a neutral stuff can be converted into a resource over the years. I will give you an example. This you don't need to write in your exam, just to give you an example. In America, in this Colorado area, a farmer once dug out something from the ground. A farmer once found something in the ground, a big something in the ground, and he brought it home. He didn't know what it was. Alright, he did not know what it was. He just kept it at home. Somehow this news of this something that he got from the ground reached somebody who knew what is gold. Alright, and then they realized that here in Colorado there was a lot of gold, and that famous gold rush started. All the people from Europe started to come down to this place and mine gold. Alright, for the farmer, this chunk of gold was neutral stuff. It was neither harmful for him nor useful to him. He got it, he kept it. But people with more knowledge about this thing knew it, that it was gold, and they knew what purpose it serves. So suddenly this neutral stuff became a resource. Clear? Alright, so these are the properties of a resource. So my question to you was, what are the properties of a resource? So these are the properties of a resource: functionality, utility, and dynamic. Alright. So now we will go to the next part, next topic of discussion with you, which is resource versus wealth. Resource versus wealth. Now your economics teacher will tell you what is wealth. Wealth is anything that has a exchange value. Okay, wealth is anything that has exchange value. Exchange value. And what is a resource? Resource is anything that is useful to man. Alright, so if somebody asks you what is wealth, you define both the things. Or what is the difference between resource and wealth? You say resource is anything that is useful, wealth is anything that has exchange value. Clear? Now, you will see that all wealth definitely is a resource, but all resource is not wealth. Please remember, please understand these two lines. All the wealth will be a resource, but all resource may not be wealth. Why? Wealth is anything that has got an exchange value. Clear? Wealth is anything that has got an exchange value. But resource is anything that is useful. It may not have exchange value, but it is useful to you in this way or that way. Clear? But wealth means it must have an exchange value. So it is clear. Exchange value, that is, if I give you something, it has got a value, it has got a money value of it, or an exchange value of it. In barter system, it has got, if I give you this, I can exchange it for something else. Or in money economy, if I give it to you, you will have to get it from me with money. I'll give you an example, you will understand. Gold is a resource and it can be considered as a wealth also. Coal is a resource and it can be considered as a wealth also, because if you sell coal, you'll get money. Petroleum products, petrol, diesel, if you sell it is a resource, it's a natural resource. So if I sell it, I'll get money. So it is a wealth. So all resources are definitely wealth. All wealth is definitely resource. See, all this wealth, petrol is a wealth, coal is a wealth, gold is a wealth, but is also a resource. Now I'll tell you the name of some resources which is not wealth. For example, the air you are breathing in. Is anybody charging you any money for it? No. So it is a resource, but it's not wealth. So this is the difference between resource and wealth. Now we shall go to another part which is known as now you know what is resource, you know that resource is useful, so you will use resources. When you use resources, you have to think of conserving resources. Conservation of resources. What does conservation mean? Very simply, conservation means saving. Conservation means preserving. Alright, preserving thing, conserve. In our subject here, conservation of resources means using the resources, you just take, oh, this is a resource, I'll keep it in the cupboard. That is not conservation of resource. That is not utilizing the resource. You should use the resource, using the resource without compromising the needs of the future. This is called conservation of resource. You have to use the resource, but you should use it in such a way that you don't compromise the needs of the future. For example, today we have got petrol, we have got oil rigs which produce petrol and produce diesel. I've got money in my pocket and I fill up my tank, and then suppose I go in a car and I stand somewhere and I'm talking to my friend, my engine is running, there is some burning petrol. So basically what, I'm wasting it. So resource is basically using the resource without wasting it and without compromising the needs of the future. What does it mean? If all of us do this, if we carelessly use our resource today, tomorrow there will be no petrol left. Alright? Now that is why conservation of resources, as you can see, is directly linked with the utilization of resource, using of the resource. How is conservation directly? Conservation means preserving, saving. And I am saying your saving is directly related to your using it. How? These are two opposite things. How are they related? It is related because saving of resources, conservation of resources does not mean that you stop using the resource from today. No. Then what? You are to use it without compromising the needs of the future. You are to use it judiciously. You are to use it with your mind properly. Don't waste it. Now you've seen there are countries which are more developed than India, and there are countries that are less developed than India. Say for example, countries like the UK or the USA or Japan, these countries are developed. They are developed because they have been, or France, these countries, or Germany, these are more developed than India. Alright? But countries like say Bangladesh, Kenya, these are less developed than India. Now why is the case like that? Why is the case like that? You will see that in these countries they are able to utilize their resource in a much better way. They are able to utilize, these countries are able to utilize the resource in a much better way, but these countries, compared to this, these countries are not able to utilize their resources that fully. I'll give you an example. Bangladesh is a country that is full of rivers. Alright? They use their water resources, but they have not been able to use them as much as these countries use. Alright? So, or for example in UK, USA or Japan, they have minerals and all these things, and they are producing so many things. They are producing smartphones for you, they are producing computers for you, they are producing semiconductors for you, and we are also producing, but we are not producing as much as these countries are doing. That is why any country that is able to use its resources more is more developed, and any country that is able to use its resources less is less developed. Alright? So When you are utilizing your resources, a point comes when these resources become less and less and less. So you have to think of conserving them. Now, what are the steps we can take to conserve resources? This was also a question that was asked in your unit test, and many of you have written it in many different ways. The correct answer for this question is written on page number 13. These are the ways, these are the steps in which resources can be conserved. This is page number 13 for you. All these points that you see on this page, all these points that you can see on this page, these are the various ways in which resources can be conserved. There is no other answer. These are the answers. So how? Let us discuss a couple of points here. One way is to search for alternative resources. Alternative resources. You want to save petrol? Find out some alternative resources so that you don't only depend on petrol. Today all our cars run on petrol. So the pressure is on petrol. But tomorrow, if we can develop some alternate forms of resource, some other choice, we can use petrol, we can also use that. So the pressure will be divided. In that way, you can save some petrol for the future. So we have invented battery driven cars that run on battery, that run on electricity. All right. This is one way. Recycling is another way. Recycling is another way. For example, I am using this marker right here. When the ink is over in the marker, I can throw the marker and get a new marker. But remember, to make this marker, you need plastic. You need so many other things. You need coal to run the coal or electricity to run the factories, to run the machines. To produce plastic, you need more raw material. You are using so many resources. Instead, recycling means to reuse. All right, to reuse. Don't throw it away, fill it with ink. At least you will save so much of plastic. If I will save it, so many people in the world will save it, will save a lot of plastic. So alternate resources, recycling. You can go for innovation. What is innovation? Innovation is applying the knowledge so that we can derive more use from a resource. All right, now suppose this resource serves me only this much purpose. With innovation, I may be able to make my resource last longer. This is innovation. Waste control. Don't just throw everything. Waste control. I told you, no, when you take your car out for a drive, no problem, take it out. If you need to drive your car, take it out. But control, waste control. When you meet a friend on the way, your engine is running and you are speaking, you are wasting the petrol. Or suppose we have 5 members in our family. 5 of us have to go to 5 different places or to our places. And we take out 5 cars for this purpose. Not necessary. Why don't we arrange our time so that we can all go together? We can drop each other at their location. Right? So instead of taking out 5 cars for 5 people, we can take 1 car and drop people at the location, or just for me, I take out a car. What is the need? I can take the bus, I can take the train. So waste control can be done like that. What we can do, we can find measures to not waste things. We can have waste paper baskets where we throw things instead of just throwing it. I have a chocolate and I'm having a chocolate from a plastic container and throw it anywhere. Or I drink water from a plastic bottle. When the water is over, I throw it here and there. Instead, keep a waste paper basket, collect them and sell it off to a person who recycles this plastic. So in this way, you are controlling the waste and you are saving the resource. You can also do other things like expansion of knowledge or execution of conservation related work or proper assessment of resource reserve, how much resource is left for you. These are the ways in which you can you can conserve your resources. So before I end this class, let us take a look at what all things we have learned today, and you have to write those answers. First of all, we know what is a resource. We know this. What is a resource? Then we know what, according to Zimmerman, are the qualities of a resource. Okay, we also know the properties of a resource. We also know we are able to classify resources, classification of resources. We also know the difference between wealth and resource. We also know what is conservation of resources and steps for the conservation of resources. So these are basically 6 important questions that we have learned today. Together with it, we have also seen some short questions, something like this. What is neutral stuff? And what is resistance? From today's discussion, we also know why. We also know, shall I rub the, I'll go to the side. We also know why human beings, I hope you can see it, why human beings are called, I'm writing it HR, human resources. We also know this, all right? We know all these things from today's class. I hope you can see the board clearly, and I hope you can see all the questions on the board clearly. So these are basically all the topics that we are able to answer after today's class. I do hope in this chapter you will not have any more doubts regarding this. I also hope that when anybody asks you a question, especially regarding this classification of especially regarding conservation of resources and how to conserve resources, I am sure you now know what is the correct answer. Clear? So this much for today's class. I do hope that you have watched the class carefully. These answers should reach me by day after tomorrow in the daytime. You must all upload these answers in the school group that you have. Clear? Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and keep studying. Also, class 10, I told you every week I must get at least one phone call from all of you. It is a pity I have not. That means you don't have any doubts. That means you can understand all that we are saying. That cannot be. It cannot be. If you are studying, you will have doubts. So please, I am here. I am ready to hear out your doubts. Also, there's a student, if I remember him right, I think it is Farhaz, who asked me a question on my WhatsApp. He is one student who contacted me, and also there was Murshida who has contacted me when she had a doubt. And whatever doubts you have sent me on your WhatsApp, thank you very much. I am sitting here waiting to clear your doubts. Your doubts I will send you back on your WhatsApp. Thank you very much for watching and stay in touch.